We are always grateful to hear from viewers, and our good friend Mr. Hazama has posed an interesting question about why Buddhists say they do not need a God for their practice. Keeping in mind that there are many sects of Buddhism and many individual Buddhists that may not agree, let's take a look at what Gautama Buddha himself said about it. It is clear that the Buddha believed in, or at least didn't deny, the gods, including one who could be considered a creator. Then why is Buddhism considered by many to be atheistic or non-theistic? The Buddha mentions Brahma explicitly in the Brahmajala Sutra and assigns him many characteristics that people would normally ascribe to God, as believers think of God today. The great Brahma, the conqueror, the unconquered, the all-seeing and all-powerful, the Lord, the maker and creator, ruler, appointer and orderer, Father of all that has been and shall be. The reason why the Buddha does not talk much about God is simply the belief that God is not necessary to achieve enlightenment. It should be noted that he doesn't confirm or reject this belief, but merely puts it aside. Zen Buddhist and author Barbara O'Brien explains, Buddhism is not about either believing or not believing in God or gods. Rather, the historical Buddha taught that believing in gods was not useful for those seeking to realize enlightenment. In other words, God is unnecessary in Buddhism, as this is a practice and philosophy that emphasizes results over faith in beliefs or deities. Gautama was sometimes pressed about his concepts of God, and this was one of many metaphysical questions that he remained silent about. His silence did not mean he did not have the answers. In the Samyutta Nikaya, he explains he knows much more than he is revealing, through the parable of a handful of leaves. Then the Buddha took up a few simpasa leaves in his hand and said, "What do you think, monks? Which is more numerous, these few leaves that I have taken up in my hand, or those in the grove overhead?" "Venerable Sir," a monk answered, "the leaves that the Blessed One has taken up in his hand are few, but those in the grove overhead are numerous. So too, monks, the things I have directly known, but have not taught you, are numerous, while the things I have taught you are few. And why have I not taught you those many things? Because they are without benefit, irrelevant to the fundamentals of practicing a spiritual life." Gautama was silent when asked about God because he knew the discussion would not be useful in a practical sense, and he wanted his students to deal with reality from where they were. This is like Lao Tzu telling his students that their journey had already begun, under their feet, where they were right now. Yeshua reacted similarly when pressed by his students about the nature of God and about their life's end. He explained that God is pure spirit and cannot be known except in that same spirit. Regarding what the end game of their work and lives would be, he asked them, "Why do you want to know about the end, when you know nothing about the beginning? Have you already discovered the beginning, that you are now asking about the end? For where the beginning is, there the end will be also." Yeshua also explained to his apostles that he used parables in public to describe his answers, and that in private he would give them more detailed explanations, but that some questions could not be adequately answered in human terms, and could only be known in the spirit. Like Gautama, Yeshua tried to keep his followers focused on things within their reach and on what is most immediately important. Gautama illustrated this in the parable of the poison arrow, a metaphor that also has great relevance for people today who are caught up in endless conspiracy theories at the expense of their spiritual life. Suppose that a man has been wounded by a poisoned arrow, and his friends and family are about to call a doctor. "Wait," he says, "I will not let this arrow be removed until I have learned the caste of the man who shot me. I have to know how tall he is, where his family comes from, where they live, what kind of wood his bow is made from, and what Fletcher made his arrows. When I know these things, you can proceed to take the arrow out and give me an antidote for the poison." What would you think of such a man? "He would be a fool, Blessed One," replied the student. His questions have nothing to do with getting the arrow out, and he would die before they were answered. Buddha nature is that which is common to all conscious entities, which is at once the container of all consciousness and the cause of it. It is the cause of itself. This sounds very close to "I am that I am." This pre-creation universal consciousness is what the Old Testament calls the Name, Muslims call the God, and Yeshua referred to as the Father. It is the incipient source of all that cannot be known except by its effects. Buddhism generally teaches that God is not needed for the purposes of self-realization. Yeshua might agree that it is not useful to spend too much time and effort trying to know what cannot be known before we come to know ourselves and grasp the reality of our situation as spiritual beings living temporal physical lives in an essentially spiritual universe. Each of our three avatars agree that if we seek first to think, speak, and act in accordance with the way, everything else we need will be given to us. We will receive the human heart's desire, common to all persons, to love and be loved, and to know and be known by the God who made us. None of our avatars saw their job as answering metaphysical questions, but to show people how to live in harmony with the way all things are done, to release themselves from suffering, and to ultimately gain salvation. Each of our avatars tried to point us to a spiritual realm that is, in Gautama's words, permanent, stable, imperishable, immovable, ageless, deathless, unborn yet alive, and everlasting. It is power, bliss, and happiness, a secure refuge and shelter, the place of unassailable security. It is real truth and the supreme reality. It is the good, the supreme goal, and the one and only consummation of our life, the eternal, hidden, and incomprehensible peace. This is what Yeshua simply called the kingdom. They also agree that a spiritual life is a walk. We may take guidance from a teacher, but insightful awareness and experiential knowledge of our spiritual reality are vital to progress on the path and the beginning of following the way.